Welcome back to another Mindset Method video. If this is your first time checking in, it's your boy Fit Man Dan. This is just a time where I come to share a few words that I hope help impact someone on their journey through fitness or their journey through life. Look, man, I know it's been about a month since y'all seen me. I recently just had a birthday pass by. And so I took these last 4 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks, just to kind of refresh, revitalize myself, and to really just take a break from the consistent demand to perform, right? And that really brings me exactly into what I want to talk about today, which is Sabbath, right? Laboring to rest, the faith behind the Sabbath, right? So this summer I did something that felt almost very uncomfortable for me. I stopped. I took a real Sabbath, right? Which was not just like a lazy day. It wasn't just a slow weekend. It was actually a deliberate and intentional season of rest. And, if I'm being honest, it convicted me because stopping didn't feel spiritual at first. It felt like I was being irresponsible. It felt like I was being lazy. It felt like I was just trying to push off the things that I know that I needed to do. And for a bit, it felt like I was falling behind, right? And the tension there is exactly what I want to talk about, because Hebrew 4:11 says this: "Let us therefore strive to enter that rest, so that no one may fall by the same sort of disobedience." Right? Did you catch that? We are instructed to strive, to labor, to enter rest. That's not a contradiction. That is a command, right? And if we miss it, there's something on the inside of us that will perish. We were the Sabbath was created for us, because if we don't take a Sabbath break, right, the word here says that we will perish. So I want to share a few practices that I think can really help us to enter that Sabbath rest throughout our day, throughout our weeks, and even seasonally, like I just did this summer, right? But before I share a few of those practices, I kind of want to unpack Hebrews 4:11 here, because to understand Hebrews 4:11, you have to back up just a bit to see the point that the writer here is trying to make. And the writer lands here, he lands in Hebrews 2 points that I think that we can pull from this idea of taking rest as a act of obedience. The first here is in creation. It says God worked 6 days and rested on the Sabbath. That wasn't because he was tired. It was part of the rest design, right? The model that God wanted to model for us of the work and rest rhythm, right? Rest was literally built into the rhythm of existence itself, right? God designed rest in the creation of the world. And then the second angle the writer came from here, which was the image of Israel in the wilderness. This is God offered them rest. He offered them the promised land, his presence and his provision, right? However, the Israelites refused it. Not because they were physically unable to, but because they didn't believe. They couldn't trust that God, right, was in control of everything. They couldn't fall into his rest because of their lack of faith. Hebrews 4:6 says they failed to enter because of disobedience. And disobedience here is rooted in unbelief. Their unbelief caused them to be disobedient. So the failure to Sabbath isn't just a scheduling problem, right? It's a problem with your faith. When we can't rest, we're saying consciously or not, God, I don't trust you to hold me while I be still. I don't think that you're in control of everything. I feel like I have to constantly be contributing to the outcome, or things are not getting done. And so the idea of Sabbath, right, is more of a act of faith. It's saying that irregardless of what the circumstances look like, irregardless of what I feel I am in control of, God is in control of all things, and I'm going to intentionally enter rest. and allow God to handle, right, and to take care of the situation while I rest and replenish myself. And so for me, like I said, I took this summer vacation or this summer rest, because I don't want to label Sabbath as a vacation, because it's not a vacation. It's a just an intentional time of rest as an act of faith, that irregardless of all the tasks that I knew I had to do, I trust God with the final say. I trust that God is going to handle and fight on my behalf even while I rest. Right. And so I want to share with you a few practices that I think that you can include into your Sabbath rhythms that I think will really help you to not only be more productive, but to be more productive at what you do, right? Because we want to do more, but I think that the Sabbath is introducing the idea that if we rest, we can do more with less. The quality of our work increases when we Sabbath, right? Not just we don't increase in quantity, we increase in quality when we decide to intentionally take rest to replenish ourselves, so that we show up as our best self, whether that's in the gym, whether that's in life, whether that's in your relationships with your family. It's very key for the development of our soul that we rest and replenish. And so the first practice I want to share here is the weekly rhythm, right? And I want to reframe what this actually is, because this is not just a manage of your margin. This is not you just trying to manage how much you can handle throughout the week. This is not like some self-care thing. This is a declaration of faith. It is taking one day per week where you lay down your productivity and say, I trust God's purpose. I don't depend on my constant output. I trust that God will handle, what needs to be handled on this day. If I work for 6 days, I'm taking that seventh day off as an intentional act of faith. Like, listen, I'm not gonna work specifically because I trust that God can handle, right, what I'm not able to put my work on today, that I'm not able to work on today, right? Israel was given the Sabbath as a covenant sign. It was proof of whose they were. When they honored it, they were saying, we belong to the God who provides. We don't have to earn our own existence. We don't have to work, right, for the things that we want in life. I'm not saying that we are and I don't want to say it like that, because we are called to work, but work does not gain us acceptance by God. God will take care of us irregardless, right? And so it is imperative that we trust that He will take care of us, and it's not up to us to consistently, right, work ourselves to provide. So for you, a weekly Sabbath might look a little bit different, but the question is always the same. Can you stop? Can you go 24 hours without producing, without performing, and just allow yourself to rest in the peace of God, to allow your soul to rest and trust that God will provide? If the answer is no, then this is not a discipline problem. This is a trust problem. And Hebrews here is calling you to deal with just that. And then the second practice, which is the seasonal Sabbath, right? This is the Sabbath that I experienced this summer, what is formerly known as a sabbatical for most people. And throughout Scripture, rest wasn't necessarily a weekly thing. The land itself was given Sabbath years. There were feasts and fasts and seasons of intentional withdrawal built into the Hebrew calendar. Rest was structured. It wasn't a spontaneous thing. And so for me this summer, I stepped back to let myself replenish. And what I found was that the discomfort in the early days of rest was revealing something. It was revealing that I had been running on output for so long that stillness felt like failure. But Hebrews 4:10 says, whoever has entered God's rest has also rested from his works as God did from his. So essentially, taking a rest is not failure. It is following the model that God laid out for us. It is a structure for human existence, that we work and then we rest. It is a work rest rhythm. And so rather than feeling like you're failing, feel like you have accomplished something and you're taking a moment to look back and to rest and to reflect on what you have done. Seasonal rest is how you audit your soul. It's how you find out who you've been trusting. Are you trusting God, or are you trusting your own grind? Are you trusting your own work? Are you trusting the output that you can put out? And a vacation that just changes location, like I said, isn't a Sabbath. It isn't just about a change of location. It isn't just about a vacation. It is a posture. It is a surrendering. It is saying, for this season, I am not an engine. God is. I would not rely on myself. I will rely on God, the one who provides. And then practice number 3, the daily micro rest. This third practice, right? This is where the weekly and seasonal Sabbath get their fuel. You cannot sustain a weekly rhythm of genuine rest if your daily life is a non-stop performance, right? The daily micro rest is a small deliberate moment where you recenter yourself, you ground yourself, right? Each and every day. A morning pause in the word before the noise begins. An evening moment where you lay your day down and you literally release all things that have been pulling on you. And you refuse to carry those things into the next day. A midday break where you acknowledge that God is sovereign and I am not. So for me, there are a few micro resets that I like to do throughout my day. First thing in the morning, I like to pray on the armor of God. There's a book that I read by John Bevere called Prayers Answered Immediately. And it's essentially walking you through a devotional prayer where you pray intentionally every morning on the full armor of God. And so that's a time for me in the morning for me to kind of balance myself and ground myself before the day. But then throughout or on days that I have time, I take like a midday rest or a midday reset where I go and maybe I go out to the lake, maybe I go out to the park, take a walk. And for each and every one of us, this may be different because we all have what is called a spiritual temperament, which is different ways that we feel connected to God. And so the ways that you connect with God may be different. But for me, being out in nature, taking walks, being around, the water, lakes, listening to nature, it helps me feel most connected and grounded with God. And that's something that I like to do midday or towards the end of my day to kind of recenter and ground myself. These aren't productivity hacks. They are acts of faith practiced in miniature ways, right? Every time you pause and pray instead of push, you are training your soul to trust God, to rest in Him. And that training is what makes the weekly Sabbath possible, right? And the weekly Sabbath is what makes the seasonal Sabbath sustainable. So they all work within each other. You take micro risks throughout your days so that you're able to lean on that trust weekly. You take those weekly Sabbaths, which helps fuel your trust to take those seasonal Sabbaths. Being able to trust God in the little things, right, produces trust in God in the larger things, in the larger events in your life, taking those larger acts of obedience and stepping away to Sabbath. Now here's where it all converges. And this is the part that you cannot miss. All of this, the weekly rhythm, the seasonal withdrawal, the daily micro sets, they are all pointing to something greater. They are shadows of a reality. Hebrews 4:14 through 16 introduces us to Jesus, our great high priest, the one who entered the true rest on our behalf, the one who, through his finished work on the cross, declared, "It is finished." Not keep going, not do more. It is finished. Jesus is the Sabbath. He is the rest that Israel could never really fully enter. He is the promised land in person. And when you place your faith in Him, you're not just adopting a spiritual discipline. You are entering a covenant rest that no amount of striving could produce on its own. The writer of Hebrews says, strive to enter that rest because the striving is the faith. It's the daily, the weekly, the seasonal acts of choosing to trust Jesus over your own capacity. So the question isn't, are you resting? The question is, are you resting in Him? Are you trusting in the one who came to handle it all on your behalf so that you may enter into His rest? and place all your cares onto him. This week, I want to challenge you to identify one of these 3 practices and implement them. Pick your Sabbath day. Plan your next seasonal rest. Start tomorrow morning with 5 minutes of silence before you scroll. And as you do, remember, rest is not the absence of faith. Rest is faith. And so, with that, I want you guys to remember that your work is not what defines you, right? You're not loved by what you can do. You're loved for who you are. And God here is attempting to show us that we're not all about the work, that he wants us to rest. He actually commanded us to rest and to rest in him. And he actually sent, right, the Sabbath in the person to show us and to model to us how to lean not on our own understanding, but to trust in the Father. Look, before you go, I want you to do me a favor. If you found this video helpful, drop a like. It helps the algorithm get this video out to more people. If you know someone who needs to hear this, click that share button. This may find them well in this moment. If you're not subscribed, I want you to subscribe. I drop a video here every week on mindset methods. And remember, your mindset is your greatest asset. Keep stacking, y'all.